So first up, we're going to go to a customer who has a Lifespan 2000 treadmill, and the main circuit board evidently went out. So I got the parts to replace it. Let's go get this thing back up and going. I mean, it snowed like a week ago, and we're still digging out. Okay, first stop here. We got a Lifespan 2000. I've already got it folded up because you have to fold it up to get the motor hood off to be able to get to the front screws here. These you can get to when it's laying flat. So the reported issue was the customer was walking on the tread and then it just stopped. So we didn't actually come out and diagnose this. This was a kind of an over-the-phone diagnostic, but more often than not, it's this guy. This guy just all of a sudden is pulling too much juice, pops this. So we're going to replace that and see how we go. Okay, so we're going to power the unit on. Let's see what we got up top here. So we still have power up top. Hit start, 3, 2, 1. See if we hear a relay click. Relay click. Goes for a couple seconds and stops. Now that's weird. Usually if it goes for a couple seconds and then stops, and right now it's giving me an E1. I don't know if that's the motor controller. Let's look at the speed sensor. Sometimes when the belt moves for a couple seconds and then it stops, it's basically the treadmill saying, hey, I'm not recognizing that I'm going the speed that you're telling me to go. So then it will slow itself down, or then it will just stop. So we're going to check the speed sensor. This is the speed sensor right here. And what it's doing is it's reading a magnet that's on the front roller right there. So when the motor turns, it spins this pulley around to make the belt go. And every time this magnet passes by this sensor, follow the wire, right in here the motor controller says, hey, I'm moving. Now, one of two things could have happened. The speed sensor could have gone bad, or the part of the motor controller that reads the speed sensor has gone bad. So I'm going to show you how to test the speed sensor. Of course, my multimeter is in the back of my truck, because why would I need that? It's far more convenient to have to go back outside, dig for it in the back of the pickup here. Let's find my multimeter. Hey, buddy. You're coming with me. So first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to check continuity between the magnet and the sensor and the end of the wire here. So I got to take this wire off. You got to be careful. That's like hot glued on here. So you got to pick the hot glue off to get that wire off there. So if indeed the speed sensor is good, when this magnet is in front of the sensor, and I take my multimeter here, test continuity between the 2 points on there, it should beep. Okay, so I'm going to take this, I'm going to set my meter to the little horseshoe to ohms, and I'm going to go to the setting on that where when I touch my 2 points it beeps. There's a couple of different modes here. So if I have a good connection, now that the magnet's lined up with the end of the speed sensor, if I put a point here, if I put my red one here, it doesn't matter which side, it should beep because it should recognize that it's reading the magnet. That's good. So that means the speed sensor is good. So we think we can safely assume that the part of the motor controller that reads the speed sensor is bad. Which I happen to have a motor controller with me. Also a little tip. When you're testing continuity on the end of this, make sure it beeps when the magnet is in front of the sensor, and make sure it doesn't beep when the magnet's not in front of the sensor. If it beeps when it's here, that means you've got a crossed wire somewhere in here. Another tip, as I'm starting to unplug wires, make sure you take a picture of the motor controller fully hooked up before you start unplugging wires. These 3 wires go to the lift motor, and they have to be in this order. Otherwise, this lift motor is going to get out of calibration, and then you're in big trouble. So carefully remove the glue, the hot glue off the motor controllers. Ports. Sometimes I just use my knife and pick at it a little bit and it comes right off. Make sure you don't mix up this black wire and this white wire here, which is your power wire. Make sure you don't mix this black wire up with the black wire of your drive motor, so it's going to go pop. Now that my wires are disconnected, I'm going to take out these screws in the back and the front, and the plate should come out, and then I can replace the board on the plate. Heat plate's out with the motor controller on it. Now it's time to replace the motor control board off the plate. Okay, so the motor controller's off the heat plate. There was like a little double-sided padded piece of tape on the back side. Just kind of stick your knife in there and pry it off there. You want to keep that on there because it helps this from vibrating around. Sometimes people ask what this white stuff is. It's anti-static paste, because you got some potential static electricity that's being built up on these things. So this stuff will stain the carpet if you set it down on there like that. So make sure you are careful with this. Okay, so I'm hooking the wires back up. These black and white wire, or black and red wires from the motor. Just think of it like a car terminal. Red is positive, black is negative. Now what if you hook these up wrong? Your motor's going to run backwards. Okay, moment of truth. I got everything hooked up. Let's power this bad boy up. And let's just see what happens. Motor moving. Well, happy day. So it was in fact an issue with the speed sensor port here, where the motor controller reads the speed feedback. That part was bad. Quite frankly, I would have guessed that. But after testing it with the multimeter, obviously it wasn't. But now you got to make sure that you get these wires out of the way here from that drive pulley right there. You don't want that rubbing on that wire. So I'm going to make sure that those clips are nice and tight, and I got to figure out a way to kind of keep that out of the way there. But I'd say we're on the mend. So by the way, you should always put a rubber mat underneath your treadmill, especially when it's on carpet. One, it keeps the carpet clean, but when the belt moves, it builds up static electricity, which then can go somewhere, like maybe into an electronic component, or just even kind of zap you when you touch your finger to the console. Kind of like rubbing your socks on the carpet and then touching something. You know, sometimes you can get some static buildup. So make sure you put a rubber mat underneath your equipment. Back up and going. Neato Mosquito, courtesy of Bam.